The cameras flashed, the crowd froze, and just like that, Hollywood had a new obsession. Welcome to StarScope Report.
Join Jordan and Jamie as they uncover Hollywood drama, music industry shade-ups, and viral influencer scandals. From red carpet surprises to social media controversies, we dive deep into the stories behind the fame.
And today, you are exploring a story that is honestly just wild. We are doing a deep dive into the incredible, chaotic, and triumphant Hollywood legacy built by one specific family. According to a massive new pop culture retrospective, Melanie Griffith just turned 69.
Which is a huge milestone, yeah.
Right. And there was this recent paparazzi moment in the Hollywood Hills that perfectly captured this family's staying power. You have 3 generations of women stepping out into the flashbulbs. In the center is Melanie Griffith, and she's flanked by her 95-year-old mother, the iconic Hitchcock muse Tippi Hedren, and her 35-year-old daughter, Dakota Johnson.
It is such a stunning visual, you know? It captures nearly a century of Hollywood history in one single frame.
It really does. But the mission of our deep dive today is to strip away the glamour. Because when you look closer, past the designer clothes, you aren't just looking at a family tree. You are looking at a portrait of just, like, absolute unvarnished survival.
Yeah, the narrative hidden inside our sources today is honestly far stranger than any script a studio could ever dream up.
Oh, absolutely. We've been pulling from a giant stack of celebrity biographies, decades of historical entertainment journalism from People in Vanity Fair, plus film festival press releases.
And we are diving into a world of scandalous romances that totally defied the studio system, these crushing public battles with addiction, and I still can't believe this part literal wild animal attacks.
It is so intense.
Ooh.
But before this family conquered the indie film world, they had to survive a literal Hollywood bloodbath. And that's not even the wildest part.
Seriously.
So to understand the sheer gravity of this legacy, we have to travel back to the matriarch. Let's look at Tippi Hedren. She didn't start out as Hollywood royalty at all. She was just a refined New York fashion model.
Right. Yeah, she was plucked from total obscurity by Alfred Hitchcock. According to the biographies, he actually spotted her in a TV commercial for a diet drink in 1961.
Wow, just from a commercial.
Right. And he immediately signed her to this exclusive 7-year contract and cast her in his 1963 masterpiece, The Birds. But, you know, the psychology behind his obsession with her is super crucial here.
How so?
Well, he didn't just see a pretty face. Hitchcock actually described Hedren as and this is a direct quote, a dormant volcano. He praised her sharp expressions and said that beneath this perfectly controlled, icy blonde exterior, there was this massive eruptive force just waiting for an outlet.
And Hitchcock basically wanted to be the one to control that eruption, right? Because he was notorious for micromanaging his leading ladies, like dictating what they wore, who they spoke to, how they lived their daily lives.
Exactly. It was incredibly suffocating. So it makes perfect psychological sense that when Tippi finally broke away from his control, she gravitated toward the one thing on Earth that absolutely cannot be directed or controlled.
Which brings us to the big cats.
Yes. The shift happens in 1969. Tippi is in Africa filming Satan's Harvest. And during that trip, she is introduced to a captive lion.
And that just flips the switch for her.
It radically altered the trajectory of her entire life. She looked at these apex predators and saw something she deeply connected with. Just raw, untamed nature.
But the leap she makes next is staggering. I mean, she doesn't just sponsor a lion or, like, join a wildlife charity. She and her husband at the time, Noel Marshall, they decide to make a narrative film about living with big cats.
Which becomes the infamous 1981 film, Roar.
Yes, Roar.
Yeah.
And the logistics of this production are terrifying. The studio system obviously wanted nothing to do with it, so they funded it themselves, bought a ranch in Acton, California, and basically turned it into an African compound.
And they acquired over 100 lions, tigers, leopards, and cougars. And we really need to pause on the word untrained here.
Right, these were not Hollywood animal actors.
No, not at all. Tippi and her family actually lived on this compound with these wild animals. There was a full-grown lion named Neil who literally had the run of the house. He would casually stroll through the kitchen and sleep in the bed with Tippi's teenage daughter, Melanie Griffith.
See, that is the part that blows my mind. The mechanics of just feeding 100 big cats nearly bankrupted them, but the physical toll was so much worse. I found myself rereading the injury reports from this set, and they sound like a war zone dispatch.
It was a bloodbath. The production dragged on for 11 years.
11 years. And during that time, Variety reported that Tippi suffered a fractured leg from being bucked off an elephant, and a severe scalp wound after a lion bit her head.
And Melanie was brutally clawed in the face.
Yeah, by a lion. An injury so severe she actually required reconstructive surgery. And the cinematographer, Jan de Bont, was essentially scalped. It forces this really uncomfortable realization for me.
What's that?
Well, we judge stage moms today for putting their kids on reality TV,
Yeah.
but Tippi literally put her teenager in a house full of apex predators. Like, was this just peak 1970s Hollywood hubris, or genuinely groundbreaking, if completely reckless, conservation effort?
It was undeniably reckless. I mean, the physical scars are permanent, but dismissing it purely as a cynical cash grab or hubris kind of misses the underlying transformation of Tippi. She was genuinely radicalized by the experience.
Right, because of the conditions the animals were in.
Yeah, she saw the horrific conditions these exotic felines faced in captivity across the country. So she leveraged the disaster of Roar into establishing the Shambhala Preserve to care for them. She even went to Washington, testified before Congress, and championed the Captive Wildlife Safety Act.
So she takes the trauma of that set and alchemizes it into a lifelong crusade for animal rights.
Exactly. She goes from being Hitchcock's tightly controlled puppet to a fierce warrior running a wild animal sanctuary in the desert.
But if you think surviving a lion attack is the wildest thing Melanie Griffith did as a teenager, wait until you hear about the romance that completely scandalized 1970s Hollywood.
Oh, man, yeah.
Because think about the psychological baseline Tippi's lifestyle sets for her daughter. If you are Melanie Griffith and your formative years involve lions sleeping in your bed, the constant threat of dismemberment.
Your threshold for danger is completely warped.
Exactly. A lion might eat you at breakfast, so what does a little Hollywood scandal matter? Which perfectly explains how she walks right into one of those controversial relationships of the era.
The environment just completely normalized chaos for Melanie. So the year is 1972. Tippi is starring in an independent film called The Herod Experiment.
And Melanie is just hanging around the set.
Right, she's only 14 years old. And there she locks eyes with her mother's 22-year-old co-star, Don Johnson.
A 14-year-old and a 22-year-old.
Yeah.
I keep trying to wrap my head around how the adults in the room allowed this to happen.
It's hard to fathom now, but you look at the era. This is the new Hollywood of the 1970s. The old studio moral codes were completely dead, boundary pushing was celebrated as high art, and child labor protections on indie sets were virtually non-existent.
The cultural guardrails were just entirely down. Melanie later described him in interviews as the most beautiful person she had ever seen. The attraction was instantaneous.
And despite that glaring age gap, Melanie actually got kicked out of her Catholic school and moved into a rented house with Don when she was only 15.
Just wild. They end up getting married in Vegas in 1976, right when Melanie turns 18. But reading the biographies, it's pretty clear this wasn't some fairy tale culmination of a forbidden love.
No, not at all. Melanie admitted she pushed for the marriage as a desperate mechanism to force a change in the relationship. She wanted the chaos to stop.
But a marriage license doesn't fix a fundamentally broken dynamic. They divorced exactly 6 months later.
They both recognized they were on a collision course and bailed, and after that, they embarked on separate lives. Don had a child with actress Patty D'Arbanville. Melanie married actor Stephen Bauer, had her first child, and started landing these significant film roles.
But the 1980s proved to be this brutal gauntlet for both of them. They both descended deep into the darkest corners of Hollywood excess. Don Johnson hits the absolute stratosphere with Miami Vice. I mean, he was the defining face of 1980s cool.
Oh, the pastel suits, the Ferrari, he was everywhere.
Yeah. But behind the scenes, the substance abuse is just rampant. He hits a wall first and manages to claw his way into sobriety in the mid-80s. Melanie, however, is still in freefall. And the contrast between her public success and private agony is so jarring.
It really is. The breaking point occurs around 1988 on the set of Working Girl.
Such a huge movie.
A massive career-defining Mike Nichols comedy. Melanie is playing Tess McGill, this fiercely driven secretary fighting her way up the corporate ladder. But the pressure of carrying a major studio picture really exacerbated her addiction.
The sources say she was drinking herself to sleep, showing up late, and causing the studio hundreds of thousands of dollars in delays. She was drowning in plain sight.
And nobody at the studio really stepped in. They just cared about the dailies.
Exactly. The person who finally breaks through the noise and stages an intervention is Don Johnson. He reaches out, uses his own hard-won sobriety as a lifeline, and helps Melanie check into the Hazelden Clinic in Minnesota.
And that intervention is the hinge point of their entire legacy. when they reconnected, the power dynamic was entirely different. They weren't a naive teenager and an older actor anymore.
Right. They were two seasoned survivors of the Hollywood meat grinder.
Heavily scarred, trying to beat back the same demons.
It's like they were two runaway trains that crashed, spent a decade in the repair shop, and somehow decided to share the exact same track again. Why does a love story born out of such toxic beginnings feel so triumphant here?
Because they shared a native language of trauma. If you're Melanie, you can't explain the pressure of the paparazzi or the lingering effects of a lion attack to a normal person. But Dawn gets it. It's like two deep-sea divers suffering from the bends. They're the only ones who understand the pressure the other is under.
And that shared language leads to this incredibly poetic reconciliation. In June of 1989, Dawn proposes again with a 4-carat diamond ring.
And they strip away all the Hollywood fanfare, right?
Yeah, they have a tiny 30-person wedding at their ranch in Aspen, Colorado. They retreat entirely into this quiet, golden bubble of sobriety, just playing golf, going jogging, living the mundane life the entertainment industry had previously denied them.
We are so conditioned by tabloid culture to view celebrity relationships cynically. We assume that a relationship born out of a scandalous 1970s dynamic is doomed to be a permanent failure.
But Dawn pulling Melanie back from the brink wasn't just a romantic gesture. It was the life-saving extraction. They divorced again in 1996, but they'd remain fiercely loyal friends today.
They proved that a relationship doesn't have to stay legally bound forever to be deeply, fundamentally successful.
Exactly. And later in the episode, we'll talk about the shocking twist nobody saw coming with the third generation. If you're loving these Hollywood twists, make sure you're subscribed. We've got even crazier stories ahead.
Definitely hit that subscribe button, because into this brief period of Aspen tranquility, the third generation takes control. Dakota Johnson is born in 1989.
And despite her parents wanting to keep her out of acting to protect her, her upbringing was anything but normal. The sources describe it as this chaotic, high-altitude village.
Yeah, she was raised by nannies, tutors, and step-parents on movie sets all over the globe. Her stepfather, Antonio Banderas, actually directed her in her film debut, Crazy, in Alabama when she was just 9 years old.
For her, baseline for reality is a film set.
Dakota has been very candid about this.
Yeah.
She saw the ugly side of fame early on, the intense public scrutiny, the lack of privacy, but she also absorbed the mechanics of filmmaking.
So when she finally decided to pursue acting as an adult, she was staring down the massive, intimidating shadow of her grandmother and her parents. Dakota could have easily just ridden the coattails of her family name or become a tabloid fixture like her parents were. What is it about her career strategy that makes her stand out from the typical Hollywood Nepo baby?
Well, the way she steps out of that shadow is a literal masterclass in modern Hollywood economics. She doesn't slowly build an indie resume. She goes straight for the jugular by taking the lead role of Anastasia Steele in the 50 Shades of Grey franchise.
Which was a massive cultural phenomenon.
Huge. The critics were merciless to those films, but the critical reception is irrelevant to the strategy. Those movies grossed over $1 billion globally.
Wow, $1 billion.
Yeah. By anchoring that franchise, Dakota secured international bankability. In the film industry, foreign pre-sales are driven by name recognition. Her name alone could now secure financing for a movie in Europe or Asia. She essentially acquired a massive amount of leverage.
That is the crucial mechanism right there. She didn't do 50 Shades just to be famous. She did it to acquire industry capital. And the second the trilogy wrapped, she deployed that capital to legitimize herself as a prestige artist.
She immediately pivots to complex, demanding independent films. Her performance in Luca Guadagnino's 2018 remake of Suspiria perfectly illustrates this pivot.
Oh, that movie is intense.
It's a grueling, gory, deeply disturbing film about a coven of witches running a Berlin dance academy. And the thematic parallel is impossible to ignore here.
Because of Tippi.
Exactly. Her grandmother, Tippi, is one of the most famous horror muses in cinema history, forced to endure Hitchcock's psychological torment. Decades later, Dakota steps into the horror genre, but she does it with complete agency, diving into a film centered entirely on female power and bodily autonomy.
That's such a brilliant connection. And she continues that trajectory with incredible performances in The Peanut Butter Falcon and Maggie Gyllenhaal's The Lost Daughter.
Oh, she was so good in that.
Right. She plays a young mother who is completely raw, unvarnished, and suffocating under the weight of her responsibilities. She taps into this deep well of vulnerability that feels remarkably similar to her mother Melanie's best work, but with a sharp, modern edge.
But acting is only half the equation for Dakota. She recognized early on that being a muse, even a highly paid one, is inherently dangerous. You are always at the mercy of a director or a studio executive.
So in 2019, she took the ultimate step to secure her legacy. She launched her own production company, Tea Time Pictures.
Which is huge.
It reminds me of the music industry, honestly. It's like a pop star leaving a major label to own their master recordings.
Dakota looked at her family's history. Tippi being controlled by Hitchcock's contracts, Melanie being battered by the tabloids and studio demands, and realized the only way to truly survive Hollywood is to become the studio.
Precisely. She doesn't just act in the Hollywood machine, she owns the means of production. Through Tea Time Pictures, she produced the Sundance hit Cha-Cha Real Smooth and the drama Daddy-O, which she starred in alongside Sean Penn. She is dictating what scripts get bought, who gets hired, and how the films are distributed.
And the industry is recognizing this shift too. The Karlovy Vary International Film Festival recently awarded her their President's Award, specifically honoring her influence as both an actor and a producer.
She really represents the ultimate evolution of this dynasty. She has Tippi Hedren's icy, fashion-forward poise. She possesses Melanie Griffith's emotional accessibility and raw screen presence. But she armored herself with a fierce entrepreneurial control that neither of them had access to in their eras.
She isn't just surviving the Hollywood machine, she is actively dismantling it and rebuilding it in her own image. It forces us to reconsider the entire narrative around this family.
Absolutely. They didn't just weather the storms of the entertainment industry, they alchemized their trauma. Tippi turned a disastrous, bloody movie set into a lifelong sanctuary for abused animals.
And Dawn and Melanie took their mutual descent into addiction and forged a profound, enduring friendship that saved both their lives.
And Dakota took the chaotic, unstable reality of her childhood and forged an ironclad career where she holds all the cards. Which brings us right back to that opening image.
The flashbulbs popping in the Hollywood Hills.
Yes. Tippi at 95, fighting the toll of time, but leaving behind a legacy of absolute defiance. Melanie at 69, smiling, a survivor of a culture designed to break women, wearing her scars with pride. And Dakota at 35, at the peak of her powers, guiding the family into a self-determined future.
It is a testament to an incredible resilience that is passed down, refined, and strengthened with each generation.
And it leaves you with a much larger question to ponder as we close out this deep dive. We've spent this time unpacking how the classic, brutal Hollywood studio system and the wild monoculture of the 20th century forged this specific family's armor.
But look at the landscape today.
Right. The monoculture is dead. The traditional studio system is collapsing under the weight of streaming, TikTok, and influencer culture. The very forge that created and nearly destroyed Tippi and Melanie no longer exists in the same way.
So is Dakota Johnson the final evolution of this dynasty, or is she the last of the true Hollywood dynasties?
Will we ever see a legacy forged in this specific fiery crucible again? Or are we watching the magnificent end of an era where a name alone could command the silver screen?
It's definitely something to think about.
You've been listening to StarScope Report, where Jordan and Jamie uncover the stories shaping Hollywood, music, and pop culture. Thanks for tuning in. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that keep the stars shining.